Guardians versus Omni-Man. The Guardians could have beaten Omni-Man if they were prepared. Another hot take that gets stronger the more you think about it is that the Guardians actually could have beaten Omni-Man if they had been prepared. Now, to be clear, that does not mean Omni-Man was overrated. It means the circumstances of that fight mattered a lot. He got the jump on them. He came in with one goal and no hesitation. The Guardians were confused, caught off guard, and reacting emotionally to betrayal in real time. Even with all of that working against them, they still pushed him incredibly far. That is what makes the scene so great. It tells you two things at once. First, Omni-Man is terrifying. Second, the Guardians were much more dangerous than people remember. And when you rewatch the fight with that in mind, it becomes almost tragic. There are moments where better coordination, faster decisions, or less hesitation might have changed everything. That is why this hot take is so engaging. It does not take anything away from Omni-Man. It just gives more respect to the team he ambushed. The real genius of that fight is that it feels believable both ways. You believe Omni-Man won, but you also believe the Guardians had a path to victory. And when a fight can do both, that is how you know it was written well. The Guardians. The original Guardians would have reduced major damage in the Invincible War. One of the most interesting what-ifs in the entire series is the idea that the original Guardians of the Globe could have massively reduced the damage in the Invincible War. And honestly, that take feels very believable. Not because every individual member is some unstoppable monster, but because together they clearly had the one thing a lot of teams in this show do not have: real synergy. They understood each other's roles. They fought like people who had done this many times before. They were coordinated, experienced, and built to function as a unit. That matters more than people sometimes admit. In a massive, chaotic event like the Invincible War, having a team that can instantly organize, adapt, and support each other would be huge. They would not solve everything, but they absolutely would have changed the scale of the disaster. And that is what makes this hot take so compelling. It is not just saying the OG Guardians were strong. It is saying the world lost more than a superhero team when Omni-Man killed them. It lost structure. It lost experience. It lost a line of defense that Earth never fully replaced. That makes their deaths feel even bigger in hindsight, because you start to realize how many future catastrophes became worse simply because they were no longer around. Omni-Man versus Conquest. Omni-Man would beat Conquest in a one-on-one. This is where the hot takes get really fun, because saying Omni-Man would beat Conquest in a one-on-one is exactly the kind of opinion that starts arguments instantly. And honestly, that is because it has real logic on both sides. Conquest feels like pure destruction. He is monstrous, brutal, and probably stronger in the most obvious sense of the word. He carries that aura of a Viltrumite built for one thing only, and that makes him terrifying. But the reason this take works is because fights are not won by aura alone. Omni-Man is smarter. He is more controlled. He is more disciplined. He does not just throw violence around to enjoy it. He uses it efficiently, and that difference matters. Conquest feels like the kind of fighter who might drag things out because he enjoys domination. Omni-Man feels like the kind who notices that weakness and punishes it. So even if Conquest has the raw edge and brutality, there is still a believable case for Omni-Man winning through experience, focus, and better instincts. That is why this debate is so good. It is not just stronger versus weaker. It is savagery versus calculation. And in Invincible, that kind of contrast usually matters more than people think. Amber. Amber is not overrated, but the writers also failed her. Amber is one of the most interesting hot takes in the whole series because almost nobody talks about her with any balance. It is usually one extreme or the other. Either people act like she did absolutely nothing wrong, or they act like she ruined the show. But the more interesting take is that Amber is not overhated, while the writers also failed her. That is where the real conversation starts. Because in Season 1, the frustration people had with her did not come from nowhere. The issue was never that she wanted honesty from Mark. That part makes complete sense. The problem is that once she knew he was invincible, some of her reactions stopped feeling natural and started feeling written to force conflict. And that is why so many people turned on her. Not because the idea of Amber was bad, but because the execution made her feel unfair in a way that pulled viewers out of the story. Then Season 2 comes around, and suddenly she feels much calmer, much more understanding, much easier to like. But the change happens so fast that instead of feeling like development, it feels like correction. And that is why this hot take has so much emotional tension. Amber is not just a character people dislike. She is a character people feel was mishandled. There was a better version of her in there the whole time, and the show only really started reaching it after the damage was already done. Eve's dad. Eve's dad is not misunderstood. He is just a bad father. This might be one of the least flashy hot takes in Invincible, but emotionally it hits harder than most of the power scaling debates people love to have. And what makes this take so strong is that the show never really asks you to be confused about him. He is the kind of parent who hides behind concern when what he is really showing is control, pride, and disappointment. He does not try to understand Eve as a person. He tries to reduce her into something he can judge. Even when his daughter is out there doing impossible things, helping people, and becoming more than anyone around her, he still chooses to focus on fear, criticism, and disrespect. That is what makes him so frustrating. Not because he is loud or cartoonishly evil, but because he feels real. A lot of viewers know exactly what this kind of parent looks like. The kind who cannot celebrate you because doing that would mean accepting that you became something they never understood in the first place. Invincible. Invincible needs more real deaths and fewer fake-out. One of the more uncomfortable hot takes, but also one of the most honest, is that Invincible needs to stop leaning so hard on fake-out deaths and start committing to real consequences more often. Season 1 built a lot of trust with viewers because it felt dangerous. It felt like this show was willing to go further than most animated superhero series. Characters could die brutally. Important people could disappear. Victory never felt guaranteed. But once a series teaches you that kind of fear, it has to maintain it carefully. If too many characters survive what should be the end, or too many villains keep slipping away, the tension starts to soften. And that is the real issue. It is not bloodlust. It is not viewers wanting death just for shock value. It is about stakes. It is about wanting the story to keep that same edge it had when it first grabbed everyone by the throat. When death starts feeling temporary, danger stops feeling dangerous. And in a show like Invincible, where so much of the drama depends on impact and consequence, that matters a lot. You can absolutely keep characters alive for future stories, but if audiences start expecting escape routes every time, you lose something important. Donald. Donald is one of the most human characters in the show. Donald might be one of the most human characters in Invincible, and that says a lot in a show full of aliens, monsters, cyborgs, and superpowered disasters. Because what makes someone human in this world is not what they are physically made of. It is what they choose to do when things get ugly. Donald keeps showing up. He keeps sacrificing. He keeps putting himself in danger even when he has every reason not. And what is so powerful about his character is that he does not do this with glory attached to it. He is not treated like the coolest guy in the room. He is not framed like some unbeatable legend. He is just a man who keeps making the hard choice. That speech about how we are not our bodies, but the decisions we make, the lives we change, and the people we love, is one of the most quietly meaningful moments in the show. It is the kind of line that sneaks up on you. Donald is not just underrated because he gets less screen time than the bigger names. He is underrated because people forget that Invincible works best when it remembers that heroism is not only about power. Sometimes it is about identity. Sometimes it is about endurance. Sometimes it is about waking up over and over again and still deciding to be good. Shrinking Rae. Shrinking Rae is the most attractive girl in Invincible. This might sound like a lighter take compared to the others, but saying Shrinking Rae is the most attractive girl in Invincible is exactly the kind of hot take that gets people talking for the right reason. Not because it is absurd, but because it is specific. It tells you something about how people watch this show. Most of the obvious conversation always circles around the same names, and then every now and then somebody throws out a take like this, and suddenly everyone stops and thinks, you know what? That is not even a crazy opinion. And that is what makes it interesting. It is not just about attractiveness. It is about overlooked characters and how fan discussions tend to get stuck on the same popular picks. Shrinking Rae being put in that conversation feels refreshing because it breaks the pattern. It reminds people that fan favorites are not always the only valid answers. And in a video like this, you need at least one take that shifts the mood a little and gets viewers typing their own rankings instantly. Because whether people agree or disagree, they are definitely going to have something to say. Mark. Mark is getting close to Omni-Man in strength. And finally, one of the most exciting debatable takes right now is that Mark is getting close to Omni-Man in strength. Not stronger, not fully there, but close. And the reason this take is so compelling is because it is not just about numbers, feats, or statements from characters around him. It is about what Mark is becoming. Early on, the gap between him and Omni-Man felt impossible. It was not even competitive. It was humiliating. Mark was completely outclassed, and the show made sure you felt every second of that difference. But since then, everything about him has changed. He has become stronger physically, yes, but more importantly, he has become harder. The world keeps beating the softness out of him. Every fight leaves a mark. Every loss changes his mindset. And now you are watching a version of Mark who is not just growing in power, but starting to understand what power actually costs. That is why this take works so well in a discussion video. Because whether you agree with it or not, you can feel that the gap is closing. You can feel that the version of Mark we have now is not the boy who got taught a lesson in Season 1. He is becoming something else. And that is exciting, but it is also a little unsettling. Because the closer Mark gets to Omni-Man in strength, the more the story quietly asks a scarier question. How much of Omni-Man does he need to become in order to get there?